over to you.
Thank you, and hi everyone. Great to be here this evening. I wanted to start by just asking each of the participants to state their name, what fund they work for, what your role is at that fund, and also maybe just 1 or 2 minutes on what your career path has been so far, so where you studied and where you worked prior to this. So maybe Shruti, if you want to kick off first.
Sure. Hi, I'm Shruti Iyengar. I work as a senior investment associate at Sustainable Ventures. We're a pre-seed fund investing in climate tech. And I currently manage the portfolio of 30 companies and also run our accelerator program. In terms of my career path, I'm originally from India. I moved to Singapore when I was quite young, spent about 8 years there working and studying. I've got a background in mathematics and economics, and then worked as a sustainability and impact innovation consultant, built out a skill set around impact measurement, and then sort of reached a point where I found consulting a bit limiting and wanted to move into investing. Spoke to a bunch of impact investors and decided that a master's in finance would be the best bridge for me. So moved to London about 2.5 years ago, did my master's at London Business School, and then graduated and joined SV, and I've been here for about 1.5 years now.
Great, thanks. And Martyna, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Martyna, and I work as investment associate at the firm called Unbound. So we invest in more on that growth stage, so Series B+ companies. I personally look after our investments within logistics, supply chain tech, and sports. In terms of my career path, so I studied at Edinburgh University, and while studying, I was working at Christmann. So I got a bit of operational experience there. And after graduating, I worked at Citi as a part of their investment banking team, covering tech. And while there, I realized I would love to combine my finance and operational background and VC growth equity. Seems like a best fit. And I've been at my current firm for 1 year now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, sure. So I think my audio is a bit funky, so do let me know if you can't hear me at any point. And so my name is Marieke. I'm a senior principal at Forestay. Forestay is a early growth venture capital fund based in London and Geneva. We invest into pan-European technology companies in the enterprise data and automation space. So I guess the next question is, how did I get here? Yeah, so I've joined Forestay relatively recently, just mainly because I like where the company is itself in its life cycle. The fund itself is a bit of a growth company because we're sort of expanding and I can be part of building that business, which is also what I do with the companies that I invest in. So that kind of attracted me to that. Before I was in with Octopus Ventures in London, so another VC fund, a bit earlier stage. I was part of their IC. I was on the board of several companies. Was there for a few years, hired a small team. And before that, I was with Zug Capital, also a growth investor in London. There's a clear trend there. And I spent a few years with them, learned a lot, fell in love with VC, which is why I think I spent the rest of my career in that market. But before that, I was in investment banking in London, and before that, Frankfurt. And I have originally studied business administration. We Germans tend to be very, very boring in these things, in Mannheim and Mexico, less boring. But yeah, this is what let me, yeah.
Great, thanks everyone. And a bit about me, I'm Hannah. I've been at Index Ventures for nearly 6 years. I'm one of the partners there. I spend most of my time investing in B2B software companies, from early stage all the way up to late stage. Before I joined Index, I was at eBay for 3 years and Ocado for a couple of years before that. And then prior to that, just after I left university, I did consulting for a couple of years because I studied economics at university and then had no clue what I wanted to do with my life and thought that consulting was the obvious route, and quickly realized I definitely don't want to be a consultant for the rest of my life, and left that. So I have an operational background. I've never done anything strictly in finance before I joined Index, but yeah, I've been here for a while. And maybe as next question, would be great to hear from all the panelists what your day-to-day looks like. So what, I know there's sort of no typical day in this job, but it would be great, to roughly, explain to everyone here, more or less sort of what you spend your time doing. Maybe we'll go around in the same order. Shruti.
All right, I'm gonna have to expect this from now. So I do a bunch of different things. 20%, I'd say 20 to 30% of my work is focused on sourcing and due diligence. So I meet with founders on a regular basis, sort of help them to help me understand their business models and see if they might be a good fit for our investment. So on a regular day, I might be meeting 1 or 2 founders and trying to do diligence along the way. And then about 70-80% of my work is actually focused on portfolio management. And we run an accelerator program, which is quite hands-on, and it's a 12 months program. At any given point, you have about 8 companies in the cohort. So you are helping them with pretty much everything. And they kind of like to treat you like an extension of their team. So you end up doing everything from market segmentation, prioritization, helping them understand who they should be talking to for customer validation, trials. So we run workshops with them, help them understand their pricing strategy. And then some of the companies are fundraising, and then we'll help them to kind of introduce them to next round investors. So I have a lot of conversations in the day also with investors who come right after us and who are the sort of the seed stage and the venture stage investors, and try and connect them with our founders. Yeah, so a lot of my time is spent, but a large portion of my time is often spent with the founders themselves and helping them sort of solve their day-to-day challenges and plan for the year ahead. Hope that's useful.
Great.
Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you can't hear me. I'll try to speak louder. So similarly to Shruti, my time is divided between sourcing, execution, and portfolio management, but a bit different percentage split here. So I would say around 40% of my work is focused on sourcing. So again, reaching out to companies within the sectors I cover, reading about the sector development, and kind of forming a thesis around what I would like to focus on within the next couple of months, and what makes sense for us as a firm to look at within those particular sectors. Secondly, execution. So whenever a company, either from my kind of priority list or whenever there is an inbound coming, is raising money, I would of course do and lead the due diligence. So looking at the business model, financials, understanding the sector, comparing the company to competitors, and anything else which is relevant. And the last part, which is approximately 20% of my time, is portfolio management. So I sit in the boards of a couple of companies, and I help them with really whatever is needed. As Shruti says, like, they treat you as extension of their team. So whatever they need, you're there to help. So either if they're fundraising, or they're working on their business plan, or they need some help with their sales pipeline, or anything like that, I would be there to help them, and I would be involved in this work.
Yeah, how do I follow on without just repeating everything? Because I think venture is one of the few places where what you do actually doesn't change that much with the years you remain. So yeah, similar sort of main activities for me. I think the one thing that probably became a bit more time consuming for me, next to sort of, meeting new companies, then actually doing the deals and then working with them after the deals, is just basically a little bit of, I mean, admin sounds very negative, but, sort of team leadership, management coaching, thinking about strategy, thinking about investment themes, kind of in a strategic way, but also sort of in a tactical way, right? How do we go about research, or how do we spend our time? What makes us better investors? How can I help my team and my peers, my superiors, to become, to keep learning, and to be to sort of move with the time, and to understand what really will be relevant in a few years, because that's, in the end of the day, what we probably, well, me less than the rest of the panel, because I'm slightly later stage, but still I also need to know what basically a mainstream sort of person or tech fan knows in a couple of years. I need to know that now, so I can make sure I don't miss anything, and I meet the right persons at the right time, because the market is quite competitive. So I would say that is the one thing that has become, that has taken up a little bit more of my time, but not too much. So I still spend a lot of time meeting founders, a lot of time working with my companies, like my CEOs and the management teams, and quite a bit of time in DD when we are about to make a new investment.
Thanks, Marieke. Yeah, I also don't want to be repetitive, given that you ladies have explained it really well, what this job entails on a day-to-day basis. I think the thing I just add is, on the portfolio side, a lot of what I spend my time on and helping companies with is hiring. One of my partners calls us glorified recruiters, but the truth is that's often one of the ways that investors, we find, can have the sort of biggest, outside of capital, can have the biggest impact on our companies. Like if we find them like an incredible CRO or CFO, or someone that's really going to move the needle for the business, that's like a hugely impactful thing. So a lot of what we do is helping them find these candidates, interviewing these candidates, helping get these candidates over the line and get them to join the companies. So that's also a massive part of the job. And I think recently we've really seen that the hiring market is super aggressive, super competitive. Most of these candidates have like dozens of job offers with crazy salaries and equity offers. So it's really sort of, hard work actually persuading these brilliant candidates to join our companies over the other companies they have offers from. So that's a lot of what the job entails, I think. Maybe, as an extension to that, it'd be good to hear from everyone, what skills or kind of attitude or general abilities do you think are really helpful in this job, and what are the ones that you had going into it, and what are the ones that you've really had to learn that may not have come so easily? And maybe we'll go the other way around, and Marieke, you can kick off this time.
With pleasure. So yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think what I kind of was good at coming out of a very sort of numerically and quantitative analysis driven sort of career, and also sort of university time, was all these analysis in terms of financials, forecasts, and also historics, and then also kind of just understanding how does an industry work. I mean, that's something that I was trained in quite well, and so that came easy. But what I find to this day very difficult is to invest in very early stage companies, and that means companies that are either very young themselves or either in very young markets, just because it's very, very hard to, you can make a very, very good assumption, and you can read a lot, and you can think about it very deeply and talk to a lot of experts, but it's very, very hard to actually know how an industry will form and shape and what the dynamics are going to be, and to understand whether a company will be successful. It's mainly three factors. It's the market opportunity they have and the dynamics of that market. It's the team, and then it's the sort of quality of the business model and the product. And sort of, I think with the market opportunities and nascent markets, I'm still learning, and I find it's incredibly challenging intellectually, and it's fun, but it is something that keeps us awake at night. And then the other thing I think I'm saying it comes quite easy to me. It's venture capital compared to other buy-side sort of segments is very people-driven. They all are, but I think venture, especially on the investment side, even more. So being able to connect with people, build a rapport very quickly, maybe also understand team dynamics when you meet a group of people and start working with them, that is very, very important. And I like to think that's something that came quite natural to me, that I enjoy very much. So I hope that answers the question.
That was great. Thanks. I'm happy to go next, and then hand it over to Shruti and Martyna. I think some of the skills that are really important, I think you just have to have, just like an open-mindedness and an optimism. It's easy, there's whenever you meet a company at the really early stages, it's easy to think of a million ways how this can go wrong, how this can fail. You can think about competition, you can think about market not being big enough, all of these things, and most of those could always theoretically happen. But I think that the thought exercise, and one of my partners always says this, our job is not to think about what happens if things go wrong. Our job is to think about what happens if things go right. And if things do go right, how big can this business be, and how transformative can this business be? So I think you do need to have that like risk appetite and ability to really think optimistically and open-mindedly about the world and opportunities. And yeah, I think some challenges that can happen, and this is maybe more personal to me, is when you've been an operator before, there's a tendency to keep your operator hat on as you're assessing companies, and think, project your own view of what you think the company could do or should do, and listen with happy ears rather than listening to like exactly what the founder's telling you and what their vision for the company is. And sometimes there can be a tendency to kind of get too in the weeds with the founders. Like, you're not a co-founder of the company, and you always have to kind of be that step removed from the company. You're always, if you're a board member, you're like you're the trusted advisor. You're always supporting the company and working very closely with the founder, but you're not day-to-day operational with the company. And I think you have to have just be wary of that tendency to kind of get too involved, or to project your own visions of what you want the company to be, rather than what the founder wants to build. So I think they're just two things that I'd add from my side. But maybe Martyna, you can share your perspective. Actually, just before that, I'm just going to answer this one question that came through, and people, any attendees that are listening, please feel free to put more questions in the chat. There was a question that came through around what does it mean to be a board observer, and overall that means you attend board meetings, which typically in most companies happen quarterly, sometimes more often, and you're there to observe what happens at the board meeting. And the reason why it's important is often when you start off in venture, depending on what fund you might be at, and depending on what level you might be at, you don't get to necessarily lead deals at the beginning and become the board member, but often if you work on the deals, you get to be a board observer alongside that board member. And it's just, I found this personally at, starting out when, never having done any kind of investing or venture before, when I first joined Index, it's just unbelievable experience to see what it's like to be on a board and to get that experience before you kind of become a fully fledged board member. So whilst you won't be sort of voting or necessarily participating a huge amount in board meetings, you get to see, what happens in a board meeting. dynamics, interactions with like founders and investors, the key issues that are discussed, how like, you know, the flow of a board typically works, difficult discussions that typically happen. And also the thing that I always found most interesting is some of the boards that I was a board observer on, they had, you know, maybe 3 or 4 different investors as board members. And you really get to see like all of the different styles of board members. There's some that are hands-off, there's some that are hands-on, there's some that are very vocal, very like supportive of the company, there's others that are really challenging of the company. So you do get to sort of see all those different styles, and you kind of get to kind of work on what you want your own style to be. Because from my perspective, there is no like perfect and, you know, way to be a board member. Everyone has their own style and their own way of working with companies, and it's really helpful to see everyone's different styles and ways of working. So I hope that answers the question. But sorry, Shruti, do you want to go ahead and answer the original one about you know, what skills are really sort of helpful in this job?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think I'm trying to just see what I can add to what's already been said. I think I completely underestimated the power of building good, really meaningful relationships when I got into the role. I thought I placed a lot more importance on sort of just understanding the financials, the valuations, you know, being able to negotiate a term sheet with the founders, things like that. And I think from when I came into the role to now, 1.5 years in, I've realized that thankfully I was half decent at building good relationships. And that's really been very, very helpful, because you start realizing it as sort of the months progress, when your founders come back to you with questions and, you know, key decisions they want to make, and they want to check in with you. And that's when you know that you've been able to kind of add that value and that they see that. So I think just building those really strong relationships, and I think the underlying attitude of value for me has been empathy. And I think just having empathy for the people you're working with, both your colleagues as well as the founders you're working with. You know, we work with founders at such an early stage. Sometimes they're sole founders, and even if they're co-founders, it's a 2-man team at that point, and they're trying to do everything. So it's really about helping them, you know, not feel that overwhelmed. So I think there's been a huge part of just that empathy that I think I didn't think that I would need for the job as much. So yeah, so that's one thing. And I think the other piece I would say is just having sort of a hunger for learning. The thing about, I guess, you know, it's been spoken about before, but you have to really be ahead of what's happening, and you have to be already expecting the newest innovation in, I don't know, bio-waste materials that's going to come up tomorrow out of a Innovate UK grant. So we're quite plugged in. We try to be plugged in. We try to keep our finger on the pulse, and I think what I've realized through the role is it's not always just by reading and sitting behind a desk. It's more often through the people you meet, the conversations you have. So I think just building those meaningful relationships outside of work as well, and sort of staying hungry for knowledge. The last thing I think that's really worked and that really helps in this space is to just ask as many questions. I think when I came in initially, I work with so many technical founders, and I don't have a background in microbiology or, you know, microencapsulation and things like that. So I think sometimes you kind of hesitate to ask some questions. As an investor, you think you should know everything when you're doing diligence. But I've just had some of the best conversations and learnings by asking a whole lot of questions from the founders and just having them explain everything. So I think just being very, if you don't try, you're not going to know, and you're never going to, you know, the worst that'll come out of it is somebody will tell you that's a silly question, but it's fine. So I think it's just having that totally like, giving yourself the freedom to you know, ask anything. And that's helped.
Totally. Martyna?
Sure. I think I wanted to say 2 things. One is curiosity, which kind of Shruti already mentioned about. So, I mean, this job is a constant learning. Like, you constantly learn about new industries, new business models, new companies, etc. And if you're just not enjoying that, like, you're not gonna enjoy the job. Like, simple as that. So I think this is why I love this job. Like, I constantly get to learn more about the world, about people, about business, about new exciting developments, which will hopefully make a good impact on the world. And you just need to like crave for this knowledge, because otherwise, yeah, you're gonna get bored pretty quickly. And I would say second thing, which I believe is quite crucial in the job, is critical thinking. So while I agree with Hannah that optimism is super important, I think you should also like balance it with critical thinking, because when businesses are fundraising, they will always show us everything is great, and you just need to be able to pick up those little things which which are not going as great as they should, or they're trying to hide from you, or something like that. So while you need to believe that the company is poised to succeed, you still need to kind of balance it with critical thinking and forming your own view, because I think, again, with in venture, like you're from the very beginning, you're expected to have a view and to express it openly. And if you don't remember about kind of learning that and kind of building this view about certain things, like it will be quite hard to be a great investor, in my view. I think one thing which I found quite hard at the beginning, and it's kind of similar to what Marieke has mentioned, is this qualitative thinking around what will make the company great, or what will make it succeed. Because again, coming from like banking, from quite a numerical background, like it was easy for me to have certain KPIs in mind, or certain benchmarks, like what growth I should expect, what kind of margin evolution, etc. But really, it's also about kind of qualitative thinking, more like visionary thinking, like how would you like the industry to evolve? How would you like the company to evolve? Like what will make them great and successful? And I think this is what I'm still learning, but yeah, I think at the beginning it was quite hard, but I challenged myself to kind of think about it on a daily basis.
Great. Thanks, Martyna. Maybe next question. It would be good to hear from everyone given that most of us have been doing this for a little while now. What are the elements of your jobs that you feel are changing the most, maybe in terms of like the technology, or travel, or ESG, or time horizons, like anything that you feel has really markedly changed since you guys sort of entered this industry? And would be interesting to hear your thoughts. Maybe Marieke, you can go first.
Yeah, sure, happy to. It's a tough question. I think sort of I entered the industry by basically joining a fund that had already very strong sustainability angle at the time. It was basically a bit before its time in a way. And so, but I think outside of actually that small group of funds now, sustainability and ESG has become much more prevalent than it maybe used to be 10, 15 years ago. And also what I really like most recently, sort of in the last 2 to 4 years, people have become increasingly more aware of not doing just a tick the box exercise, but actually trying to impact and affect change. And as an investor, where you actually have quite a lot of leverage about a group of often quite a large number of companies, we're in a very privileged position to help build companies that do business in a sustainable and responsible way, at least to a certain extent. I mean, we're all in the end of the day working for investors who want to multiply their money, but on the other hand, you can set the rules, which is nice. And I don't think that was necessarily the case when I started out. And the other thing I think is sort of diversity. So I think much more, and seeing that, it's the four of us speaking about this today, all having like pretty cool jobs in VC and just being on boards and being sort of influential people in the industry. That does have an effect, and that has an effect also into the portfolio companies, and those are tech companies generally speaking, right? And tech has been super male dominated until very recently. It still is, if we're honest about it. So, and I think to help sort of break that up and interest more females into investing and finance, but also into STEM subjects and tech careers. I think that's something that is new and that is really, really great. And it's something that is my little thing. So when I join a board, that's probably what I would be talking a lot about, apart from all the other interesting things. But I think for me, these two aspects have become much more important and much more prevalent.
Thanks. Totally agree on those points. Martyna, any additional thoughts on that one?
Sure. I'd say two things. One thing is, you can all relate to that. I think throughout 2021, we saw the ticket sizes increasing, the round sizes increasing, the frequency of the rounds happening increasing, and it's been hard to keep up, honestly, with because companies have been raising round after round, given there was so much capital available in the market. And I think what it also affected was the negotiating power of the founders. I think given they had good founders had opportunity to take capital from a lot of different investors, like their negotiating power has increased. And I think when a couple of years ago, the investors had more negotiating power, and throughout the last couple of years, it gradually shifted more towards founders. So I think this I think this has been a quite significant change last year. I think we might be seeing a bit of a correction here now. Let's see. I think great founders will still benefit from those trends, but I think this really affected my job over at least especially H2, I would say. And I think second thing which I'm observing in the market is funds are gradually opening up for graduates and opening up entry-level roles. So I think a couple of years ago it was quite hard to get into at least growth stage firms straight from uni. And now we're seeing more and more funds opening investment analyst positions, taking graduates as new hires, which I think is a great change.
Great. Shruti, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd echo the same themes as Marieke, but slightly different perspective. I think on the ESG and sustainability front, like she shared, we've been in the space for 10 years and we focus only on climate tech. So it's something that's quite normal for us, but we're seeing the amount of competition just increase so much. And it's not all great competition. It's not all well-intentioned money or smart money, but I think we have seen a sort of a peak of greenwashing, and then now there is sort of a movement towards, okay, is this rainbow washing? Is this greenwashing? Is this actually truly, sustainability? I think more questions are being asked, and I think that's positive at least. And we hope that, people are able to use better filters going forward. And I think the other piece would be, for me personally, because I've got a background in impact measurement, I've seen just how much impact reporting has grown and how much it's become more embedded into into both portfolio companies as well as funds, and starting to see some of the more like impact focused funds really look at how metrics can be tied to things like GP carry, and that's really like pioneering and really putting where you're sort of walking the walk and talking the talk, like and saying this is actually what matters to us, and we'll make money when we actually hit those impact metrics in the simplest form. And I think I'm hoping that becomes more the norm.
Great. Thanks, Shruti. I think I don't have a huge amount to add to those points. Maybe we can answer a few questions. One was around, is venture capital the right place for fresh graduate students with limited industry experience? So I'm happy to share my perspective and would really welcome the other panelists' views on this. I think it's preferable to get some experience outside of venture before you enter this industry. And I think, when I started, and I'd say this was about 6 years ago, most people in venture had a background in investment banking, a few in consulting. And even in that short time period, I've seen that massively shift. And I know because when we look for candidates to join Index now, a lot of what we're looking for is people with startup experience, whether that if you've been a founder yourself, or you've worked in a startup in the early days, or you've joined a scale up, or you've worked at another big tech company. It's really, really valuable experience. And, as Martyna was saying, there's a ton of capital in the market these days. And so a lot of our job actually becomes persuading founders to take our money over another fund's money. And in doing that, you have to persuade the founder that you would make a better board member or a better investor than anyone else out there. And one way of doing that and differentiating yourself is sharing your experience and showing how your experience of working in this early stage company and seeing it scale could really help them, and sharing the learnings and avoiding the pitfalls and that sort of thing. So I think it's not to say you can't do this job straight out of university. There are plenty of people that have and have succeeded, and a lot of the job as well is like hustle and grind, and that's great. Then and many kind of students have, like, who've just left uni have that. But I think some of that experience that really helps you sort of bond with founders is best gained by working, doesn't mean you need, a decade of experience, but at least a few years working in a tech company would be, my thoughts. But I know there's lots of different views on this, so would really welcome if any of the other panelists have views on that, please share.
No, I think you nailed it there. nothing to add. It's how I see it as well.
Great. So maybe to answer the other question that came through, which was, I'm curious that during sourcing and DD phase, what qualities make a strong founder, and what do you think makes a great startup team? So maybe Martyna, if you want to take that one first.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm not sure there is like a secret sauce to it. I would say definitely one thing which improves the credibility of the founder is if they had a company before. So if these are like serial entrepreneurs, serial founders, for sure it tells you that they've done it before. They kind of know how things work. But it doesn't mean that a first founder is not a great founder necessarily. I think it's something which we take into consideration, we look at, but it's not a yes or no thing. Yes, another thing would be definitely like industry experience. So if they worked in the industry before, I think again it just shows you that they understand the problem they're solving. They've experienced it before. They have connections. They have kind of personal insights from their own experience, which again is great, but again not a must-have. I would say there are again founders which are great and succeed without that. I think what else? Yeah, I would say these are like the two things. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll think of something else and can add, but I would be curious to see what others think too.
Yeah, I'm happy to share my thoughts. I have a personal preference for founders who have experienced the problem they're trying to solve firsthand. So rather than sort of look at it like a consulting project, you know, where is there sort of a gap in the market or white space, founders that have really experienced this problem, whether in their like past job or whatever it might have been, and thought, you know, I can't bear this. I am going to like dedicate the rest of my life to solving this problem, because startups are really tough. You know, there's highs, but there's also like lows, and it's stressful, and there are always going to be super tough times. So like the great founders are ones that like are mission driven, and they are like so determined to solve this problem and to build this business, that they'll kind of push through those difficult times. So I really love founders who've experienced that, and you know, where you can just really see that clear kind of founder market fit, I think is great. Any other thoughts from people there?
Yeah, maybe totally agree with both Martyna and yourself, Hannah. But one thing I would maybe add that is important is sort of a certain personality type, because as you say, it's startups are so hard, and these, like, I always look for something that kind of shows me that someone has the grit. It's a weird combination of being a strong leader, being inspirational, being able to kind of attract and forming like emotional bonds with like very high quality individuals, because they need to hire their team, and being almost having the same trait that you need to sort of win Wimbledon, right? When you're sitting alone on your side of the court for 4 hours and have to perform, and there's no one, absolutely no one that goes through the same thing, can hold your hand or can help you. And that is hard to find. So I always, apart from, as I said, the things that have been described already, I'm always get very excited when I have sort of, you know, former athletes that founded a company, of professional athletes, or former potentially sort of people who have worked in a high stress environments, like be it the military or be it, you know, certain organization where, you know, they have learned how to work as a team, how to lead, but also how to, you know, just keep going when things are really, really tough. Because as cool and as fun it is, it's always a roller coaster. And you need people, especially founders, to have sort of the grit to kind of push through the troughs, and they will come. Every company, you know the name of, has gone through terrible times, multiple times.
That's right. Anything to add, Shruti?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty much, I look at two things. One is, I think Marieke covered it quite nicely, but basically resilience, because and especially at the pre-seed level when we're investing, it's almost like you're not betting on the horse, you're betting on the jockey. So we experienced it in our portfolio firsthand when COVID hit. You know, when your business model somehow doesn't become viable anymore, do you have it in you to pivot, and do you have it in you to hustle and find a new application for what you've developed and spent so much time working on? So yeah, that resilience and in founders. And I think the other thing is, I quite like to look at how they take feedback and how coachable they are, because it's a long journey. It's not, you're not dating. It's like getting married, I think. Though I'm not married, so I don't know. But I would say it's you know, you want to be side by side with this person for a while. So I think for me, it's how coachable are you? How well do you take feedback? And can we both together make this you know, a bigger success? So that's the other thing, in addition to what everyone else said.
Great, thanks, Shruti. All great points, everyone. Thanks. Maybe just for the benefit of all the attendees, can you all share some advice for people starting out in this industry? And, you know, maybe if you're still at university, what's the best way to you know, set yourself up for a career in venture? Feel free, anyone, to take that first.
Maybe for like, what I would tell someone is to just try and build a network. And it's actually quite easy especially when you start out. There are a lot of sort of, you know, meetups or get-togethers or sort of young VC communities that you can join, and where everyone will be in the same situation as you, trying to build a network, trying to build a career. trying to build deal flow, trying to understand what everyone else is thinking of so that you're reading the relevant stuff. And I think that's it. I mean, for me, and then obviously a sort of passion for the job, and also passion sort of for deals. You know, when you find a company that you like or you work on a deal, then, you know, sort of bringing that a little extra to it. That it's not okay, I'm just sort of doing the grind here, but I'm actually, you know, enjoying it and learning, and that, I think that is quite important. So yeah, it's but mainly I would encourage to invest time in building a network and going for a lot of coffees and a lot of beers.
Yeah, I definitely second that. You can definitely, you know, reach out to people in the industry who are either your uni alumni or just are in your network, or even like a cold email like to a junior. Like, I think people are usually very open and are keen to chat and tell you more about their experience and then the work they do. So I would definitely encourage you to do so. At the end, not a lot of people do that, I think so, and I think it's a great source of insight and knowledge for you. So I would definitely encourage that. And I think second thing, and building upon what Hannah said about operational experience, if you have opportunity to do an internship in a startup or even like work part-time alongside your studies, if your situation allows you to do so, I would very much encourage that. Because yeah, as we said, operational experience in this industry is very, very helpful. And again, it sets you apart from other candidates who might not have it. And I think you learn a lot, even if it's an internship or, you know, your own part-time job.
Shruti, anything to add?
Sure. Sorry. I was going to say operational experience top really. I think if you can just go and work for a couple of different startups, you know, couple of different internships, see how the different sectors, because VC is so broad. Actually, there's so many different sectors and subsectors. There's so many different ticket sizes. You need to figure out where you want to actually play. And I think so working with a couple of startups would give you that. My favorite kind of my usual advice is try and work with a startup that is on the operational side, so, you know, under the COO directly when they're scaling, you know, somewhere between seed and Series A, and then, or getting into a new market, that's everything. And then the other piece is work with a startup that's fundraising, and try and understand how investors look at that startup. And that's a whole different experience of its own. And I think if the way I went about it, at least, is, and I hope people can learn from that, I guess, is to look at the investors who actually inspire you and the kind of investors you want to join, and then look at their portfolio companies and try and work for them. That would be, you know, a direct sort of path to understanding how the investor engages as well with the portfolio company, and if that's the kind of team you want to work with eventually. And I think the last piece is I know I struggled with this. So if anyone is struggling with it, because when I was doing my master's, I came in with rose tinted glasses and I was like, I want to be working for like these large impact funds, you know, these are the funds that are leading the world. And I never bothered to pause and ask people what they did on a daily basis. And I think that's the most crucial part of the conversations during these coffees and beers, just asking someone to explain to you what they do daily and what motivates them. And I think that's what made me realize that I wanted to work really pre-seed, like early stage, just the first person to work with that founder and like shape them. So yeah, so hopefully through those conversations, you'll figure out, you know, there are people I've met who say, I can't take such a risk so early. Like it just gives me it's very uncomfortable for me. I want to work with a company that's more well established, you know, where a few things are sorted out. And then they usually work on the growth side or like a slightly larger ticket size. So yeah, have those conversations and figure out where on that spectrum that you want to actually play, and also know your narrative, like why is that particular topic really important to you? We meet lots of people who say climate tech is everything. It's trendy, so of course it's everything, but what part of it is crucial to you, and why do you stay awake at night thinking about it? I think that's an important narrative to have, because like we've spoken about it, I think VC is all about huge part of it is interpersonal dynamics. And even when you meet teams and interview with them, it's not just case studies, or it's not like, you know, getting into consulting or IB where there's a lot of structured interviewing processes. It's a large part of it is fit with the team. So you need to, you need to want to wake up and work on that problem every day. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, they're all super valid points. And I think touch on the point that like venture is not just like, you know, a standard thing and everyone does the same thing at every firm. There's different sectors, different stages, different geographies. So you can go from seed investing or pre-seed investing, which is sometimes investing in one founder or two founders that literally just have an idea in their head of something they want to build, and you give them money to go out and build that idea. And sometimes it's like very late stage investing, just before the company goes public, when, you know, they have hundreds of millions of revenue, and at that point it's a lot around, you know, the concept of proven, and then it's a lot around, you know, how big do you think this can be, rather than can it be big at all. And then there's sectors, so consumer, B2B, fintech, gaming, marketplaces, climate, biotech, like there are thousands of different like sectors that you could be investing in. And similarly with geographies, Europe and US, maybe the geographies you hear most about, but there's a ton of activity now in Africa and Latin America, you know, really all across the world. So really, I think a really important exercise is thinking, what is of real interest to you in terms of, you know, sectors, what really, you know, is, you know, so exciting and where your curiosity lies, but also in terms of stage. Pre-seed investing is very different to late stage growth investing. At late stage growth investing, I think, you know, the banking skill set is super useful and it's a lot about numbers. Pre-seed, it's like interpersonal, judging people, seeing what, you know, whether you think these people have the ambition to build a massive business. So understanding your own interests and also skills and abilities, I think, is really important in terms of, you know, guiding your career path towards one of these different areas. And maybe to answer the most recent question, and I'm sure everyone has a view on it, how would you address the issue of gender gap in the VC ecosystem? And maybe the panelists can touch more upon how they found it and whether they feel like it's changed or is changing. That would be helpful. So whoever wants to take that one first, go ahead.
Yeah, happy to go first. Yeah, so for me, I actually started out in very male-dominated teams, and that's been quite interesting at times, being, you know, the only female and maybe the most junior person in a team is not always a great place to be. And I'm not saying that anything like really bad ever happened to me, but it's just sometimes it's just a tiny bit harder to, I guess, connect and build rapport with, you know, the rest. And so I was really happy when I was at Octopus. We were a super equal team. We would it was actually hilarious. We had a time when we were in the sort of deep tech focused team, I think 4 women and 1 man, and we had so many like investor presentations where all investors, or, you know, a company comes into pitch and everyone from Octopus was female, and that was just, we didn't even think about it, right? Like sometimes people pointed it out, but for us it was just like another meeting, which I think I haven't experienced that in any other organization, and I thought that was just really nice. Doesn't mean that everything was golden there either, but, you know, definitely in a much better space than many other places. And now I'm sort of back in a place where it's a bit more male dominated, and that's okay. I mean, we're all used to that. I'm sure we've all worked with a lot of men. It's got pros and cons to it. But yeah, I think for me, I find it important to have diversity, just generally diversity of thoughts. And that means that in the team, you must have representation of basically as much of what you find in the population as you can. So yeah, I think it has changed a lot. I think in 10 years, it will be even better than now, because sort of my peer group will be even older than we are now, and all of you guys will be, you know, also in the sector, and I think it will be fine, and it's solving itself to an extent, but it's not it's not perfect yet, and you do come into situations where the whole partnership is male, and then you have a few females junior in the more junior ranks, and that's not great, but I think time will hopefully solve that.
Hope so. Anyone else have a view on that?
I can step in. I think like it's a hard one, right? I mean, I'm sure everyone agrees. I think what's important in changing or improving the diversity in the firm is really support from the top, so from the management, and really like from kind of your male colleagues. So I'm quite lucky. I think my boss is very supportive of improving diversity within our firm and our industry, and he kind of takes actions to improve that, as well as my colleagues. Like, they also realize diversity of thought, diversity of background. Kind of closing the gender gap is important, and I think it makes a massive difference in actually kind of transforming the words into actions, right? And I think, you know, we can all play kind of a small part in it, and kind of influencing our colleagues, like our management, and kind of realizing that it's important, and hopefully changing that. I think this is the most important. And again, the second thing, I like to get involved, yes, in initiatives like this, because I think we also just need more women to come in to the industry, even at the junior level. So then, as Marieke mentioned, like in 10 years, hopefully a lot of us will stay and will be senior, and then it will be also easier to just drive change across our firms and our industries.
Agreed. Shruti, any thoughts? Is it different in the sector in which you're in? Do you feel like there's maybe more women in that area, or it's still not as diverse as it should be?
Well, I think is a long way to go for it to be as diverse as it should be. I don't know, actually. That's an interesting question. Though all the stats I read, it feels as bad. In the climate space, we're constantly trying to bring in, and I think for us at SV especially, diversity goes beyond obviously you know, race and gender. It's diversity in your backgrounds. You don't have to go to a you know, an Ivy League school to be a founder. You know, could you have built an innovation? I mean, like Hannah said earlier, I think frustration leads to the best innovations. So if you built an innovation because your dad was experiencing a difficulty, or your mom was experiencing a difficulty, and that would be a great founder for us. But yeah, I think on the question of how we've been, how we're trying to improve it, at least, I think we look at it from probably two sides. The obvious, you know, there are lots of stats out there about the percentage of funding that goes to female founders being so small. And I think a large part of it is because at the end of the day, our, you know, ICs need to change the way they look. And if your investment committee looks a certain way, you tend to choose founders who look a certain way. And so I think for us, a big part of it is how can we bring in more female investors, and how can we bring in more women into sort of the investing side of things. So we do try and host sort of roundtables and sessions with just other female investors to get together and to support each other and sort of build that network. And I think personally, it's quite important for me because I didn't realize the whole diversity angle of things till I moved to London. In Asia, I actually didn't experience it as much for some reason, or maybe I was oblivious, I don't know. But moving here, and also maybe moving into the VC space, I've grown a little more conscious of it. And, you know, I think there was a point where I was just frustrated, and I was like, it would be so great to see a few people who look like me, who I can look up to. So yeah, so we're doing a bunch of things outside of work as well, where we're hosting sort of, you know, women in climate investing, just starting off with sort of a group, and then, you know, trying to put together sort of mentorship programs. So yeah, I think that's kind of how we're trying to do a bit to change things, to move things. And then we host a lot of female founder office hours so that we can try and just help them more, and try and make sure that, you know, I think there's a lot of stuff out there about how female founders actually have great pitch decks. It's not about that. It's about actually making the investment. So I think what we're trying to do through those female founder office hours is just to increase access, because they have great ideas, and it's just about putting that in front of the IC. So yeah, so we're trying, and I hope that in the next 5 years, if not 10, our like Marieke said, I think it would be great if our investment committees can look even 50% of what the world looks like. Yeah, that's the hope.
Totally agree. Thanks so much, Shruti. I think we're out of time. So just want to thank all of you panelists for your time, and everyone in the audience for listening. And you can go to gainuk.org for more information and resources, and a recording of this panel will be on there as well. And hopefully we can answer a few more of your questions on that. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks for hosting, Hannah.